If you follow a lot of my videos, talked about this show in passing several times, and I just think it's time that I just make a dedicated video for it. I keep hounding my friends to watch it, and they keep forgetting what show I'm talking about. This is my official promotional video about why you should watch this show. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. Today I want to talk about a show called The Other Two on HBO Max. Sadly, there's no new season of it or anything that's happening currently, so I don't know that this video is going to reach a lot of people, but maybe it'll reach fellow fans of The Other Two or just people that are curious about what I'm considering the most underrated comedy of recent times and the most underrated show of HBO Max. I don't know if this is the most underrated show on HBO Max. There's probably others that I haven't even seen, but in my opinion, this is one of those shows that is very funny, and I hardly see anybody talking about it. The only people I've seen really talk about it is sort of in the gay media space. I actually heard about this show first from Bob the Drag Queen, a RuPaul's Drag Race queen who has a podcast, which is my favorite podcast, Sibling Rivalry, and she referenced a situation in the show and sort of described the show a little bit, and that got me hooked. Once I started it, I immediately fell in love. The show does have 2 seasons out on HBO Max, and there will be a 3rd season, so at least when season 3 comes out, I will make a video on that, and hopefully that video will get seen by somebody. So is The Other Two worth watching? As you can tell, the answer to this question I always ask is absolutely yes. I think The Other Two is a really great comedy show. I think it's the kind of comedy that could appeal to a lot of people. It's kind of a relatable comedy because the 2 protagonists are millennials. It does focus a lot on relatable millennial struggles, but like not in a chuggy or cringy way, in a very smart and modern and informed way. If you're a millennial and you like comedies, I think it's a safe bet you will like this show. I typically tend to have like caveats for who might not enjoy it, or this show is cool but blah blah blah. This show I think is generally pretty cool. It feels like the modern 30 Rock. It's a very beloved sitcom on NBC in the early 2010s, and it dominated a lot of that time. It was very critically acclaimed and loved, but also very funny and accessible. I didn't watch a lot of 30 Rock myself. I think I was a little too late to the party on it, and I just didn't get into it. I feel like it's a show that I would get into if I just like committed to it, but I haven't. But The Other Two, it's not the same premise at all as 30 Rock, but it feels similar in that it takes place in New York, and mostly because it likes to critique like modern pop culture and celebrity and entertainment culture. The premise is totally different from 30 Rock, but I think it touches on similar themes. The Other Two is just more of a reflection on today's times, while 30 Rock was a reflection of the times when it was coming out. So if you like 30 Rock, that's a great start and a great indication that you would like The Other Two. But if you didn't like 30 Rock, because like me, I didn't love 30 Rock, and the few episodes I've seen, I wasn't obsessed enough to get hooked, you'll still like The Other Two. I just think it does a good job. One of the coolest things and what makes this show I think unique is that it depicts gay culture in a really fun and accurate way, and I think because the head writer is a gay man who was an actor and writer and in the entertainment industry, he and the writer's room, whoever, they were able to have a very interesting and deep portrayal of gay characters. Like, they show a lot of different types of gay characters and how gay pop culture plays out, and how being gay in the entertainment industry is a weird struggle with certain things. And you can tell a lot of the things that happen to this character are things that are based in truth. So like there's one audition where he goes and they call him back and they're like, we loved your audition, but could you read it more straight, kind of thing. Could you read it less gay? Just very authentic representations of like the struggles of being queer in the entertainment industry, and season 2, we develop even more on that with this character's journey. So I recommend it as well if you like seeing LGBT representation in media and want to see like a very funny and accurate and like relatable portrayal of it. That I think is the strongest part of the series and why I enjoy it so much. So let me talk about the other two, what kind of format it is and how many episodes. The other two originally premiered in January of 2019 on Comedy Central. Season 1 comprised of 10 episodes, and then Season 2 was released in August of 2021, so just last year, and was exclusively on HBO Max. So they moved from Comedy Central to HBO Max, which they probably have the same parent mega corporation or something. And now the other two is kind of considered a Max original because of season 2. And season 2 also had only 10 episodes. The episodes are in like the 25-minute range of runtime, so they're quick episodes to get through. Honestly, you could get through season 1 and 2 and binge it pretty quickly. It has a high rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 94%. And based on Metacritic, it is a 79 out of 100, which I think is a little low for the show, but okay. Comedy is judged pretty harshly, I think, in the critic space. But as far as comedic writing goes, like the other two is the best comedy I've seen in recent years. The other two is actually created by Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider, who are a writing duo who were head writers on SNL in 2016 to 2017. This is gonna sound really shady, but I found this surprising because SNL has kind of gotten a bad rap the last a long time now. I think SNL has been sort of viewed as more cringy, and I think it's been more like very recently that it's really declined in people's perceptions. Maybe in the mid 2010s it was still head above water, but I was just surprised when I learned that the writers of the other two came out of SNL, because SNL just has been a little bit stale the past few years, and this just goes to show that maybe it's SNL's like process or format that needs work, or maybe the writers were just really passionate about this project. I mean, they seem to really care about it and really put a lot of their own lives perspective on it. So I don't know, maybe it's a mixture of both, but it's cool that this duo came from SNL, and you feel that in the show. The show has a lot of like actors you might recognize from NBC sitcoms. As far as the premise of the other two and why it's called the other two, because it's kind of a strange name when you hear about it. The show's protagonists are the two older siblings of a kid that becomes mega famous overnight. The younger brother, called Chase Dreams, which is the most brilliant name ever. He's very much a early Justin Bieber career type pop star, except set sort of in the modern post-TikTok world. The two siblings, who are more the millennial types, Brooke and Carrie. Brooke is played by Helena York, and Carrie is played by Drew Tarver. Their little brother, Chase Dreams, is played by Case Walker, and their mom, everybody's mom, is played by Molly Shannon, who most recently played the mom, a very different kind of mom, on The White Lotus. She played a very pretentious, rich white lady mom, and she's a lot more lovable in this show. So if you hated her in The White Lotus, it's very different on the other two, but Molly Shannon is just great, and I've loved her in a lot of things. So she was probably the biggest actor on the other two that I recognized. Also a big character is Chase's kooky manager, named Streeter, played by Ken Marino, who I remembered very specifically playing one of like the sergeants on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but he was really dumb in that show. So I think the creators plus the writers' room and the actors, they're really an excellent comedic mixture, because the writing is really current, really relevant, and then the actors are really good at playing relatable type roles. When season 1 was airing on Comedy Central, they actually made a bunch of YouTube videos debriefing after each episode with the main cast and sometimes other people from the cast and the two writers. I'll link them below. They're called The Other Show, and it's the after show for the other two. Those were really cool videos because I got to hear from the two writers, and a little bit from the actors as well. And it's interesting because Helena York and Drew Tarver both kind of talk about how they relate to their own characters, especially Helena York says she relates a lot to Brooke's character. They just fit their characters really well, so it gives this great authenticity to the show. And then the two writers, it's funny because you see them next to each other and the two writers look exactly like the two main characters. So you have to wonder how much of the two writers became the characters. Sarah Schneider said that they wanted to translate their writing duo relationship onto the siblings, and that was the main thing they wanted to transfer about themselves, but also a lot of like little stories from their own lives were incorporated into the characters. So they made it sound like they didn't base the characters on themselves that much, but to me, when I saw them and saw how they talked and just saw them next to each other, I was like, these characters are them. Like, it makes sense. Season 2 of the other two was probably going to come out in 2020, but production did get delayed in the middle of filming, and I think that's why it ended up getting pushed to 2021. The show did get renewed a month after the second season started. I'm excited and hopeful that in 2022 we will have a season 3. That gives you plenty of time to jump onto the show before season 3 comes out. Let me talk in more detail about seasons 1 and 2 and the general storylines. There will be spoilers. If you want to take my recommendation and go watch the other two, you can go ahead and come back to this video at another time. So I usually in my videos do like a longer recap, but since this show isn't super current right now, I don't want to do a play-by-play on the characters' journeys. I think I'll save that for when season 3 comes out. In season 1, we are seeing Casey and Brooke deal with Chase's dreams, sudden fame. We see Chase's mom, Pat, be excited and very like an overexcited mom that's just trying to support Chase's dreams. Carrie is a struggling actor in New York City, and he's sort of auditioning for kind of embarrassing roles around New York, and in the pilot we see him audition for a man in a commercial that smells a fart. While Brooke in the pilot is working as a leasing agent for a fancy skyrise and sort of homeless, living in one of the apartments, trying to be low-key about it. So her life is very much a mess. And throughout the season, Brooke gets more and more involved in Chase's career, becoming a personal assistant and then more of a manager and kind of an advocate for Chase, trying to protect him. While Carrie goes on this journey of like hating the attention that he's getting from being Chase's brother. Like, he's very obsessed with trying to make it on his own as an actor, be taken seriously. But then slowly realizes that he's getting more opportunities because he's Chase's brother, especially after episode 4 when Chase releases the My Brother's Gay and That's Okay song, which is a total bop. Marry Me at Recess, also a bop. Like, they did a good job with the music. And apparently Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider had done some music videos for SNL and written those, so their background made a lot of sense. When making the show, they talked about how they wanted to incorporate this pop cultural element to the show while still telling kind of a real story with our protagonists. They still wanted to like poke fun at the entertainment industry, which is a whole circus. Carrie starts, after the My Brother's Gay and That's Okay song, starts getting kind of more opportunities, and goes back and forth of like hating it and liking it. Eventually he starts trying to chase like Instagram followers, and he becomes kind of superficial about his looks and sort of lets it all go to his head before realizing at the end that he's sort of gone too far. At the beginning, Brooke is also recently broken up with Lance, who is like kind of a loserish, aspiring shoe designer. At the end of the season, they're reconnecting. We don't see too much of Chase all the time because we're focused on the other two, but Chase sort of goes from being an innocent kid just creating little songs or whatever and sharing them on social media to becoming very controlled by his manager and feeling stifled and like he doesn't have a say. And at the end of the season ends with him wanting to go to college and leave his pop stardom. Also, Pat, his mom, had lied to him about how his dad died, and he eventually finds out in this very climactic moment in episode 9, and it's a very dramatic live stream meltdown moment, and Pat reveals that his dad actually froze on the roof, but it makes Chase relatable, and I just loved how the show just played into social media and portrayed it accurately, which most shows do not. Then season 2 focused a lot more on Pat Dubeck, their mom, and she became the big star instead of Chase. Well, Chase still remains a big star, and you see him be sort of kind of hitting puberty and becoming more mature with his sound, and that's part of his storyline. But at the end of season 1, Pat gets a TV show, a talk show. Throughout season 2, that talk show grows in success, and Brooke becomes her manager and manages both Chase and Pat. Ultimately, Brooke ends up saying yes to too many things for Pat, and she ends up being stretched way too thin and ends up having a disastrous finale where she faints on a runway and finally yells at everyone what she's been thinking, because Pat is very kind and nice and like just says yes to everything, very people-pleasing and wanting to take care of everybody. There's a whole thing where she does like, she meets a fan outside the talk show, and then it becomes a whole meet and greet, and it's poking fun at how that will happen if a celebrity is nice to one person. It becomes a whole thing where everybody expects the same treatment. I don't blame celebrities when they're mean or rude. I mean, with how people can be, they're so entitled to people's time and attention, and like celebrities don't have much to complain about like in life, but that's one thing that does sound like it's really shitty. So I really love season 2 because it like explored Pat's career, and it felt like so different from Chase, but still criticizing the entire pop culture machine. It's just kind of a different sector of it, which is kind of like the morning talk show and older woman character, and Chase Dreams was like the teen pop star. Very different season 1 and 2, but I liked how they were tackling different factions of the entertainment industry through the same perspective, though, of the other two siblings that are struggling a lot more in their careers and just trying to figure out how to use this fame to their advantage. So let me get into my critiques about this show. I know I'm talking very highly of the other two, and there's not much to complain about. Like, this is my favorite comedy I've seen in several years, so it's hard to pick it apart too much, though there were things that were more hit or miss. Like, I felt like Brooke's storylines for me were sometimes hit or miss in like funniness, and Brooke, especially at the beginning of season 1, felt very like a carbon copy of a Broad City character, some mixture of Abby and Alana put together. And it's funny because when I did more research, Chris Kelly actually wrote for Broad City, so made a lot of sense. It was airing on the same network. When it premiered after a new episode of Broad City. Now I realize there's a lot of kind of intertwining of the two, and it makes more sense why she feels like a Broad City girl, like she's the third member of the Broad Cities. Once Brooke kind of started caring about her career, I liked her a lot more, and I liked her a lot more in season 2 compared to season 1, just because she was navigating kind of a career and trying to figure that out. It felt more like, almost more realistic, because sometimes the hot mess character of a girl or of a woman in TV is something, or for me, it's not super relatable and not super real. Like, in theory, Brooke is homeless at the beginning of season 1, and it's like, in real life, that would be a really sad situation and not like a comedic one, which I know it's just like suspend your disbelief. It's just a comedy show, but like in season 2, I think she became more interesting just because she had goals, and she was still a mess, so it was still like there was that funny element to it, but it was still a lot more like nuanced, if that makes sense. More times than not, I preferred Carrie's story, and a lot of just like the little plot things that happened with Carrie were really good. So yeah, aside from Brooke's storylines, I don't have that many critiques of the show. I think it's a pretty great show, and even Brooke's storyline, I was just less interested in hers than Carrie's, so that was it. But let me get into the positives, since I'm raving about this show and I just want to discuss some of my favorite things about it. So like I mentioned earlier, I love how this show represents Carrie and being gay and the different ways that plays out, especially in the entertainment industry, and how you're treated as like a stereotype, or you get all these microaggressions from people. Like apparently when the boss at the Italian restaurant where Carrie works, when the boss calls him over and is like, go get the other one, as in the other gay guy, that was a real interaction that happened to Chris Kelly when he was working at a restaurant. It's just so funny because it's so real, but it also feels so ridiculous. And it just toes that line of ridiculous and real so well. I think because the world of celebrity is actually so insane, this show gets to be ridiculous but still be very like real, because you believe that these crazy ass managers and PR people are treating their young teen pop star like this, making him wear a bird cage on his head, or making him tape his Adam's apple down to prevent puberty. Like, it's silly things that are obviously extreme and ridiculous, but are grounded in some truth and critique of the entertainment industry. The depiction of gay culture is definitely the highlight for me. I think showing like the insta-gays culture was so funny. And then how that same guy from the insta-gays episode in season 2 became like a home husband Instagram account or whatever, totally like opposite from partying to like domestic. I loved that guy. I forget who that guy's name. I think Wanda Sykes' character was so funny. She was like the PR manager for Chaser, the publicist. The lines she had were so good and obviously so well delivered, as Wanda Sykes does. And I think my favorite episode is the episode 4 of season 1. That was when I was like, okay, this show is something else. You know, when you start a show and then there's an episode you get to when you're like, okay, this show, I like it. I like it a lot. Episode 4 of season 1 was that, and it's the one with my brother's gay and that's okay. It's just so funny how the PR people, like, the whole time are like, the gays love us because so-and-so tweeted at us, and then now the gays have turned it on us. They said, this song is so 5 years ago, and Wanda Sykes is just like, that's the worst thing you can be. It made me think about how these PR people react to like these stupid pop culture things that we talk about on Twitter, and how they're monitoring and seeing shit we say, probably. I don't know. I loved seeing the after show interviews. It's sad they didn't do them for season 2. They only had a couple little clips from season 2 of the actors and the writers talking. Apparently they talked about how they found Case Walker, who plays Chase, on Musical.ly, which is now TikTok, back when Musical.ly was a thing. The show started development back in 2016 and 2017, and I really appreciate how they like stayed current even though time was passing while they were, you know, producing and developing the show and to release. Like, How I Met Your Father needs to take notes about how to update a 2015 script. So they found Case Walker on Musical.ly back in 2016 presumably, and they kind of consulted with him a lot about Chase dreams and what he would say, and about social media followings. And again, writers and producers need to take note here. You need to ask the young people on your set if what you're writing makes sense. It sounds like the simplest thing, but like anytime I see social media depicted on TV, it's most of the time inaccurate and just silly. For example, there was one point where the writers had written Chase to have had like 1 million followers at a certain point, and Case stepped in and was like, actually, like, Chase would have like a 15 million followers. 1 million followers is actually not that much. And the writers were of course like, what? Like 1 million isn't a lot? That's crazy. But like in TikTok terms, 1 million is not a lot. It's such a simple thing, but the writer sat down with Case and had him tell them stories, and just the way he talked and some of the phrases he was saying, the stories he told about his own, because he was a social media star, so he knew a lot about the business. It's just awesome that they just consulted him, and I hope they give him writing credit. They definitely at least give him credit in these interviews. Asking your young people if what you're writing makes sense makes a world of difference in your authenticity. Also, this show was so cool in that because it is, you know, a Hollywood produced show, they're able to integrate like real celebrities and real shows and stuff. Like there's one episode where they go on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, and we see Andy Cohen, and there's just a lot of people that appear as themselves. In season 2, Alessia Cara steps in and is there in a scene in the sauna, and that added a whole layer of authenticity too, because it's like you believe these characters are in our pop cultural world. This is a small one, but I thought was so cool. In the season 1 finale, Chase Dreams is performing at the VMAs, and the whole plot of the episode is that he sings and sounds bad that day and has a bad performance, which I think is a genius storyline to have. They got the actual MTV VMAs voiceover lady to do the intro of Chase Dreams singing, so it's a small detail, but it feels so real. So just so many little details like that, where this script is just some of the best writing I've seen, especially for comedy that is so hard to do in like a way that isn't cringy. How I Met Your Father, which is a whole different realm of sitcom, you know, it's multicam and it's, you know, more classic, putting it as nicely as I can. The other two is a little different because it's not a sitcom that's gonna have like a lot of episodes. It has that kind of HBO-ness about it that is like short seasons and like maybe even a tiny bit of drama mixed in, which is another strength of the other two. They do incorporate some very real family problems and dynamics. That's part of its big strength, and something that gives it a relatable element in like it's not just like comedy and ridiculous and satire of pop culture. It's like a real family with weird personalities and trying to get along and be with each other. They also talked about how they wanted to make Chase like not an asshole, because the kind of obvious thing to do with his character is to make him really rude and a jerk and sort of let the fame go to his head. But they made Chase Dreams an actual like just a good kid that likes his siblings and does want their support and supports them. And I think that added a very interesting dynamic to the show, and it's part of its charm. It doesn't go for the obvious answer a lot of the time, and that is huge, I think, for a comedy. So this has been my PSA on why you should watch the other two. It's not a perfect show by any means, but it is pretty awesome, and it's just my favorite writing that I've seen in recent years. I think the core of its strength is its authenticity. People love authenticity. And also, like, if you're a fan of pop culture, then you'll really enjoy this show. You'll enjoy, like, getting all the references. And it just does a good job of, like, capturing different generations too. Like, Pat, the mom, is different, and the millennials are at the core of it. And then we have a Gen Z perspective with Chase Dreams' character. So I think I've raved on long enough. I just wanted to make a dedicated video for the other two. I've been meaning to for a long time, and unfortunately I didn't watch it right when season 2 came out. I watched it like later in the fall of 2021, so I wasn't able to like capitalize on season 2 being out, and I was gonna wait for season 3, but I just like couldn't wait. And this week I didn't have any major topics I wanted to cover, so I think it was just the opportune time. I've been watching a lot of documentaries this weekend. I watched all of the Janet Jackson series, docu-series that came out on Lifetime, and I saw the Charlie XCX documentary from Quarantine, which just came out on Hulu, and I really enjoyed them, but I wasn't sure what much there was to say about it. I might make a video just about like the genre of pop girl documentaries. I just really liked the docs, and it just felt like sort of a fan service. I don't know if that's like a bad term, but they felt like fan service just for their fans to like have something to love and have this great piece of media. Anyway, I'm going off on tangents, so I hope you enjoy the other two. If you decide to watch, if you're a fan, let me know in the comments. If you're not a fan, I mean, I don't think every single person would love the other two. There is some, like, sort of graphic sex and other things. Maybe if someone's not into pop culture, like, at all, you wouldn't like it. So I don't think it's universal, every single person would like it, but I think a lot of people would. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out videos twice a week about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!